Oh, not at all. They'd only have to pull one and they'd slip the rail in under them too.
So it was labour saving?
Labour saving. And they'd push down this one then. And they'd drive it with a hammer like that, which was sloped in and it was flat.
This is the halfway point. If the train were on time, and assuming the absence of fog, I'd be about an hour out of Galway by now, rolling at a gentle 25 miles an hour through Connemara. There's no denying the romance of the area. Just look at the spot I'm in. As for the bridge, it's got Hollywood written all over it. Not literally, of course, but it starred in a number of movies, including The Quiet Man, directed by that famous Irish emigrant, Sean Aloysius O'Feeney. That's John Ford to you and me. Just think, here I am standing in the footsteps of John Wayne. Great movie stars don't like to waste much time on the set. John Wayne was no exception, and local lad Joe Mullen was chosen to be his stand-in. 20 years later, he still has the story to tell.
I was having about 100 interviews, and all the girls look for my autograph and my postcards, and they come down to see me. We get busloads down to see me, down to my pub in the Neil. So, and they write to me from all. They've cults, they've John Wayne societies in England and in America.
On a still, hot June day, it's easy to understand all those people who came from England and Scotland at the turn of the century. If you could afford it, Connemara was the perfect spot for a second home. Some came regularly for holidays, some stayed and built.
We'd start from Euston. I think we had always had fish for supper in the station hotel at Euston. And we get on the Irish Mail. And we had a sleeper on the train, a four-berth sleeper, blue light. I can just remember when we arrived at Holyhead, hearing the porters shouting in Welsh. We'd sort of stagger half asleep onto the boat, and then we'd have a cabin and get into a through coach which was waiting at Dunleary and would take us all the way to Galway, having breakfast on the way, and we would arrive at Galway at 11:30, which is all very much quicker and more convenient than it's been since. And then we'd get into the train to come down to Recess. We always got off at Recess station. There'd be people getting in and out. There'd be a lot of ladies with shawls, with baskets of chickens and to sell, going to market and so on, vegetables and anything really, because times were hard. I mean, we were coming to have a beautiful summer here, but times were hard. The Free State was young and not much money for social welfare. And I remember people crying on Galway station and asking my parents, why? And they said they were saying goodbye to their sons and daughters who were emigrating, and they really thought, in some cases, didn't ever see them again. So that was sad. We were very conscious of that.
Once the inspiration of Ireland's poets, painters and playwrights, the railway made the beauty of Connemara accessible to all with the price of a ticket. The prospects were pleasing. Rivers and lakes that teemed with fish. The lure of salmon on the end of a line was bait no angler could resist. Ranjit Singh from far-off India was enchanted with the spirit of the place and bought Ballynahinch Castle. Not a man to shun the limelight, the great cricketer was heard before he was seen. Firecrackers laid on the line were detonated as the train passed over them and then made it stop at Ballynahinch station.
He used to be into shooting, and then he lost his eye, so he refused to shoot anymore. And he had this vast collection of glass eyes. But he became absolutely fanatical salmon fisherman. And anywhere he caught a fish along the stretch of the Ballynahinch River and here in the whole system, he'd have another pier built. And that's why there are so many piers in the Ballynahinch system today.
And so how did the local people feel when this wild Indian Maharaja arrived in what's a very sort of peaceful backwater, really?
Well, surprisingly, the local people just accepted him as he was, and he was very, very well loved by all the local people. For instance, on his birthday, which was in September, he had a big party for all his tenants and the people that used to work on the estate, and that used to be held in the backyard there. And of course, there was plenty of Guinness and whiskey and food, and that went on all day long. And he actually served them, and he hired 2 trucks then to pile them all into at the end of the day and bring them all home, because they were pretty well merry, you know. And of course this made him very popular. But he ran into one problem there, because at every dinner he would always call for a toast to his leader, who at that time was King George V of England. And of course this didn't go down very well with the local Irish people. So the way he got around that was, when the lads were pretty well merry, he would say, "Now, my friends, I would like to raise a toast to the Emperor of India." And all the lads would stand up and say, "Yes, the Emperor of India," who was, of course, George V. You know? So he got around it very tactfully.
You know, he did a lot for the area. For each season, he would buy a whole new fleet of cars for all the retainers. And then at the end of the season, as he was heading back to India, these would be given, one to the priest, one to the doctor, one to the local parson, and so on. And when news of his death came through from India, because it happened to be the 1st of April, people said, "Oh, that's an April Fool's joke." I'm not believing that. Don't want to believe that. It can't be true. Well, the elements that you can walk, I strongly recommend you do, because it is an experience. You're out there in the middle of this total desolation, lovely landscape, but you can't see a single house. There's not a trace of human habitation. And it's almost a spiritual experience.
It was in this desolate spot in the summer of 1919 that Alcock and Brown landed, completing the first ever flight across the Atlantic and picking up £10,000 in prize money from the Daily Mail. The Mail, however, did not pick up the exclusive to the story. They were pipped to the post by a local journalist, Tom Kenny. Local folklore has it that on arrival, the 2 pilots were greeted by a lone farmer, completely unfazed, who said, "Welcome to Clifden, gentlemen. Now 2 questions, where from and where to?" A perfect introduction to the Irish. Alcock and Brown weren't the only famous visitors here. Next door, Marconi chose to build his first radio station.
From what I hear of the people that were there at the time, said it was the most perfect landing until they came to a stop, and then the wheels sank in the bog and they nose dived beside the Marconi station.
Nobody knew who these strange creatures were who got out of this strange thing in the middle of the bog.